Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Bhagavan Vacha. Paramboyaha Pravakshami. Jnanam Jnanamutamam. Yajgyatva Munayaha Sarve. Param Sedemito.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Again I shall declare to you the supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection.
Idam Jnanamupashritya Mama Sadharmyam Gataha Sargepi Nopajayante Pralayena Vyatanti Cha."
By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution.
Mama Yonir Mahad Brahma Tasmin Garbham Didamyaham Sambhavaha Sarvabhutanam Tato Bhavati Bharataha.
The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the birth of all living beings, O son of Bharata.
Sarvayonishu Kanteya Murtayaha Sambhavantiyaha Tasam Brahma Mahadionir Aham Bija Pradaha Pita.
It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father.
Sattvam Rajastama Iti Gunaha Prakriti Sambhavaha Nibadnati Mahabaho Dehe Dehinam Avyayam.
Material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty Amdarjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes.
Tatra Sattvam Nirmalatvat Prakasha Kamanam Mayam Sukha Sangena Badnati Jnana Sangena Chanagaha.
O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge.
Rajora Gatmakam Vedi Krishna Sangha Samudbhavam Tannibadnati Konteya Karma Sangena Dehinam.
The mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings, O son of Kunti. And because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruit of actions.
Tamastva Agyana Jamvedi Mohanam Sarvadehinam Pramadalasya Nidrabis Tannibadnati Bharata.
O son of Bharata, know that the mode of darkness, born of ignorance, is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The results of this mode are madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul.
Sattvam Sukhe Sanjayati Rajaha Karmani Bharata Jnanam Avritya Tutamaha Pramade Sanjayati Uta.
O son of Bharata, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness, passion conditions one to fruitive action, and ignorance, covering one's knowledge, binds one to madness.
Rajastam Maschabhibuya Sattvam Bhavati Bharata Rajaha Sattvam Tamaschaiva Tamaha Sattvam Rajastata.
Sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the modes of passion and ignorance. O son of Bharata, sometimes the mode of passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and at other times ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy.
Sarvadarveshu dehesmin prakasha upajayate jnanam yada tada vidyad vivridam sattvam iti uta.
The manifestations of the mode of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of the body are illuminated by knowledge.
Lobaha pravrittirarambhaha karmanama shamaha sphira rajasiyetani jayante vivride bharatarshaba.
O chief of the Bhartas, when there is an increase in the mode of passion, the symptoms of great attachment, fruitive activity, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desire and hankering develop.
Aprakasho pravritischa pramado moha evacha tamasyetani jayante vivride gurunandana.
When there is an increase in the mode of ignorance, O son of Kuru, darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion are manifest.
Yada satve pravridetu pralayam yati dehabrit tadotama vidam lokan amalan pratipadyate.
When one dies in the mode of goodness, he attains to the pure higher planets of the great sages.
Rajasi pralayam gatva karma sangishu jayate tata pralinastamasi mudayo nishu jayate.
When one dies in the mode of passion, he takes birth among those engaged in fruitive activities. And when one dies in the mode of ignorance, he takes birth in the animal kingdom.
Karmanaha sukritasyahu satvikam nirmalam phalam rajasastu phalam dukam agyanam tamasaha phalam.
The result of pious action is pure and is said to be in the mode of goodness. The action done in the mode of passion results in misery, and action performed in the mode of ignorance results in foolishness.
Sattvat sanjayate jnanam rajaso lobha evacha pramada moho tamaso bhavato jnanam evacha.
From the mode of goodness, real knowledge develops. From the mode of passion, greed develops. From the mode of ignorance develop foolishness, madness, and illusion.
Urdvam gachanti sattvasta madhye tishtanti rajasaha janganya guna vrittista adho gachanti tamasaha.
Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on earthly planets, and those in the abominable mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds.
Nanyam gunebhyaha kartaram yada drashtan pashyati gunebhyascha param veti madbhavam sodigachati.
When one properly sees that in all activities no other performer is at work than these modes of nature, and he knows the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental to all these modes, he attains my spiritual nature.
Gunanetana titya trin dehi deha samudbhavan janma mrityu jara duker vimukto mritamashnuta.
When the embodied being is able to transcend these three modes associated with the material body, he can become free from birth, death, old age, and their distresses, and can enjoy nectar even in this life.
Arjuna vacha Karalingesh Tringunanetan Natito Bhavati Prabho Kimacharaha Katam Straitams Tringunan Ativartate.
Arjuna inquired, O my dear Lord, by which symptom is one known who is transcendental to these three modes? What is his behavior, and how does he transcend the modes of nature?
Sri Bhagavan Vacha Prakasham cha pravrittim cha mohameva japandava nadvashti sampravritani nanevritani kanshiti udasina vadasino guneryo na vichalyate gunavartanta ityevam yovatishtati nengate samaduka sukha swasta samaloshtasmakanshanaha tulya priya priyo dhiras tulya nindatma samstitihi manapamana yash tulyas tulyo mittari pakshayaho sarvaramba parityagi gunatitaha sa uchyate.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pandu, he who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion, when they are present, or long for them when they disappear, who is unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active. He is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, is equal towards the desirable and the undesirable, whose study situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who has renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of nature.
Mamcha vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityetan brahma bhuyaya kalpate.
One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and thus comes to the level of Brahman.
Brahmano hi pratishtaham amritasya vyayasya cha shashvatasya cha dharmasya sukashye kantikasya cha.
And I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness.
Om Tat Sat iti Srimad Bhagavad-gita Upnashedashu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Gunatrayi Vibhaga Yoga Nama Chaturdasho Adhyayaha. Thank you so much, Yash and Sridham, for that wonderful recitation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we are discussing text 13 today. Aprakasho pravittischa pramado moha evacha tamasi etani jayante vivirdhe kurunandana. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. When there is an increase in the mode of ignorance, O son of Kuru, darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion are manifested. Purport. When there is no illumination, knowledge is absent. One in the mode of ignorance does not work by a regulative principle. He wants to act whimsically for no purpose. Even though he has the capacity to work, he makes no endeavor. This is called illusion. Although consciousness is going on, life is inactive. These are the symptoms of one who is in mode of ignorance. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashat Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhevacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So it's a very important verse, very instructive verse for all of us actually, because be it or not, we are somehow or other, at least I can speak for myself, to some degree influenced by this mode of ignorance, uh, if not at least at some point. So it is one may start to think what need is there for us to understand all these different modes, especially passion and ignorance. One may think, I'm a devotee, Prabhu, why are you telling me all this? What is passion and ignorance got to do with me? Well, one, obviously, for me, it's very important because for our self-purification, we have to have an understanding of what are the symptoms of somebody who's in mode of passion, and what are the symptoms of somebody who's in mode of ignorance, and also in goodness. Then there is some hope for us to rise ourselves to the level of mode of goodness, and then gradually to even transcend the mode of goodness. Because we learn in the earlier verses that even the mode of goodness is binding and conditioning. It conditions one actually. So in this particular text, we will learn that how obviously this is the breakdown of the chapter which I've gone through on few occasions in my sessions. We are now in the third section, which is recognizing how the modes are competing with each other, and there is a supremacy and also a level of understanding of what each of these modes mean to us as an individuals, and how the different qualities could manifest in somebody who's conditioned by the three modes of material nature. And from tomorrow, we're going to enter a new section, which is about how acting and dying within the modes, what happens to people who die in a particular mode. And in the last section, we will learn from the Lord how we can transcend these modes. So in a nutshell, in these three verses, we are trying to basically get an understanding of certain concepts and how these concepts are defined. So in the 11th text, we learned that what happens to someone who's all the gates. We learned about the different gates in the body. Who would like to remind all of us about the gates in the body, and how is it that the gates becomes the reason of illumination for knowledge for a person?
Prabhuji,
Yes, Puja Mataji.
yes, the 9 gates, the city of the 9 gates, and each one, the gates had to be used for the satisfaction of the Krishna. And in this way, all we are utilizing the gates for the mode of goodness and the knowledge, and hence we will be this way how we can know that we are in the mode of goodness.
Yes, that's very good, Mataji. However, do you remember the 9 gates?
Yes, 2 eyes.
Please tell us.
Yeah, 2 eyes, 2 ears, nostril, mouth, anus, and genitals.
Great. Wonderful, Mataji. Thank you so much. That's very helpful. So that's what happens for somebody whose gates are illuminated by knowledge. It implies the perception by the senses based on the knowledge in the right position, clean inside and clean outside. And then in this particular text, we're going to learn in text 13 is the darkness and inertia implies not works according to the regulative principles and works whimsically for no purpose. And then finally, somebody who's an illusion, even though he has a capacity to work, he does not endeavor. So it is a very appropriate text, actually. I do not know how this text happened to be my text today, because I don't know if you all recall in yesterday's wonderful session of Krishna Govind Prabhu, I mentioned, not yesterday, in my last session, and I mentioned about some goal settings. So we're going to talk about a little bit of a goal setting today, because here you must be thinking, Divya, what is the connection between a goal setting and this particular text? Well, the connection is that the word regulative devotional service is coming here, or regulative practice. So a devotee has to have a regulated life. And in order to have a regulated life, one has to have some kind of a goal in the life. And being it is the 1st of January, I want to wish all of you a wonderful new year, but let's make this year a little bit more productive. I'm sure you've already done all of it, what we're going to discuss today. But in case if somebody hasn't done it, then they can take part in this exercise. If that sounds exciting to you to take a part in a little bit of an exercise today or a little workshop on goal setting, then you can type Hare Krishna and send it to me. If not, then we can discuss something else. I'm quite happy. Right. So, okay. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji, for the confirmation. So here we see in this section, there is a message for us that what happens to somebody who's to some degree or other in illusion. First of all, it does not work according to the regulative principle. And we're going to try to work according to that today. And he or she likes to work whimsically for no purpose. And even though he has the capacity to work, he does not endeavor. So I wanted to first of all take you all on a journey to see different perspectives on mode of ignorance from Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's hear from some devotees here. Amar Prabhu, are you online with us? Are you able to unmute yourself and read this first purport of 18.32 of Srila Prabhupada, this paragraph? If not, we will go straight to Bhagavati Mataji because she's coming on my screen next.
Is that 18.32?
That's right, Bhagavati Mataji. Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
It's 18.32 purport, mode of ignorance. Intelligence in the mode of ignorance is always working the opposite of the way it should be. It accepts religions which are not actually religions and rejects actual religion. Man in ignorance understands a great soul to be a common man and accepts a common man as a great soul. They think truth to be untruth and accept untruth as truth. In all activities, they simply take the wrong path. Therefore, their intelligence is in the mode of ignorance.
Thank you, Bhagavati Mataji. Just before you leave, I want to ask your reflection on this illuminating purport of Srila Prabhupada. The reason I bought this purport or I'm sharing this with you, this part of that purport from Prabhupada is that, and in the previous slides, what you saw in terms of this particular purport from text 13, that the person does not have any sense of regulative principle. He works whimsically. And then even if he has a capacity, he does not endeavor. Why is that? It is a lot to do with our intelligence. And there is a direct connection here for that purpose. So Bhagavati Mataji, what is your understanding of what you've just read? Would you like to just reflect back as to what Prabhupada is trying to tell us?
I think it just says that if you don't wake up and remain in that state unless someone wakes you up. So either is the ignorance is, it's very difficult the way they have put it, but that's what I understand, that you have to understand the mode of ignorance, what exactly it means, that if you neglect things, then you feel is, even though it's truth, you feel it's untruth. You see, if it's real, it's not real. That's what I felt here. Am I right?
Yes, Mataji. So one thing is that if you do not use your intelligence if you do not sharpen your intelligence through the words of the scriptures, you will struggle to understand or accept the truth as truth. And you may accept the truth as something which is untrue. So you see, Prabhupada, I cannot think of any personality in this whole universe other than Srila Prabhupada who could just give us a very simple way. I mean, if you read these lines of this purport, it makes so much of sense. So a person whose ignorance or whose intelligence is in ignorance, he's always working the opposite way. So you will find many people in India, you go into their houses and it's not an exaggeration. You will find them sometimes even there are pictures and videos of people doing the Aarti of Sachin Tendulkar, doing Aarti of Amitabh Bachchan, and doing Aarti of many other Devi Devtas, thinking them to be the Karta Dharta or the main supreme personality of Godhead in their opinion. So, and that is what is called mode of ignorance. Even though they may be very wealthy people, but somehow or other their intelligence, Prabhupada, Krishna calls them in Maya Partha, in Bhagavad-gita, he calls them Duskritana, that their intelligence is completely stolen. They are like Muda. Krishna is telling they're like the direct translation of Muda, I believe, is like is it donkey? Am I right? Fool. Sorry, yeah. So Prabhupada is directly telling, Muda, you're a fool number one. Krishna is telling directly, actually. So similarly, a man in ignorance understands a great soul to be a common man and accepts a common man as a great soul. And they think truth to be untruth and accept untruth as a truth. So that is why Prabhupada, out of his compassion, in many places, he writes that people, those who want to get cheated, they will get cheated. And in India, this, I scratch your back, you scratch my back is going on in India full on. If you see, so many false gurus are coming up and unfortunately taking people to hell. They're going to hell and they are taking all the other followers to hell as well. So thank you for that wonderful insight, Bhagavati Mataji. Chandra Chaitanya Prabhu is coming up on my list, and Prema Vilasini Mataji. Would any one of you would like to please read the second part of the second paragraph from 18.39? Please, Mataji.
I can read it if anybody else doesn't want to.
Well, we will hear from Mataji this time, Chandra Chaitanya Prabhu, if that's okay with you. No, what I meant is we will hear from Mataji, your good wife, because she was asking, can I read it?
I beg your pardon, I misunderstood for a minute.
Sorry, Prabhu.
Your first or second?
Second.
Second one, Mataji, yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
One who takes pleasure in laziness and in sleep is certainly in the mode of darkness, ignorance, and one who has no idea how to act and how not to act is also in the mode of ignorance. For the person in the mode of ignorance, everything is illusion. There is no happiness either in the beginning or at the end. For the person in the mode of passion, there might be some kind of ephemeral happiness in the beginning and at the end distress. But for the person in the mode of ignorance, there is only distress both in the beginning and at the end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, let me ask you all a question. Who would like to stay in such a state of consciousness where knowingly from Bhagavad-gita, after understanding, neither am I going to be happy when I get into it, nor am I going to be happy when I'm at the other end of it. So from the beginning to the end, it's not nectar. It's the complete opposite of the nectar. It's full of distress. So Mataji, would you kindly tell us what is it that which stuck with you in this part of Prabhupada's purport in relation to ignorance? One thing which you could reflect back, Mataji, for our benefit.
Oh, it's me. No, I'm not that. I won't be able to do it.
No, anything which you found very interesting in what you read, or even Prabhu can share that with you. Chandra Chaitanya Prabhu can share with us.
Yeah, you can share.
Well, this purport is very illuminating. In that it gives us a clear idea about the state of consciousness of possibly the majority of people in this world. Yes, we see people may have some good character, nice wealth, personality, so many other good things, but somehow or other their intelligence is in the mode of ignorance. So hence, as Prabhupada says, there's just distress all the way through from the beginning until the end. So yes, it's our duty to bring the message of Krishna consciousness to such people in a way that is somehow acceptable, or in a way that is communicable to such people.
Thank you, Prabhu. Indeed. So, unfortunately, yeah, I guess for devotees, a devotee takes a very compassionate route because he sees that there is so much of suffering. And for the lack, Prabhupada says this statement, for the lack of Krishna consciousness, the whole world is suffering right now. And it is the duty of every devotee in the International Society of Krishna Consciousness to somehow or other invite as many people as possible to take part in this wonderful Sankirtan Yajna of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and by dancing and eating prasadam. And that's it. That's the simplest way of going back to the spiritual world. You see, people are really deceased. And that is why Srila Prabhupada, when he came to West, he was so merciful on us that he realized the condition. I was hearing by a lecture, my son was hearing, and I tuned into it by our wonderful devotee Amrendra Prabhu, where he was explaining that when somebody is deceased, that person goes to the doctor. Yes or no?
Yes.
Usually,
Thank you. Thank you for confirming that. But when somebody is really deceased, then what happens? The doctor comes home, right? At least that's the saying in India. And in some cases in England, it might be slightly different. But when somebody is deceased, then the doctor comes home. So Prabhu was trying to make a point that Prabhupada was so merciful on us that knowing the condition of the people in the West, because they're so deceased in mode of ignorance, he brought Lord Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra out so that people can see them and be benefited. That's the mood of Lord Jagannath. He's so merciful that he comes out to give his mercy. Otherwise, most of us have to go into the temple to beg or to take that mercy of the Vaishnavas or the Lord. But with the special privilege of coming in contact with ISKCON, or specifically Lord Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra, is that everybody who's walking on the street of Oxford Street or James Street or Regent Street, as you walk along, unfortunately, we couldn't get that beautiful Jagannath festival this year. But let's pray to Lord Jagannath that he gives his mercy next year to the whole world in London and many places across the world. Then we get benefited, you see, then we can come out of that ignorance. Thank you, Prabhu, for that. Let's look at some little bit of a perspective from Srimad Bhagavatam point of view. So I have here Dev Kishan Prabhu. Would you like to read this
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Yeah, I can read it.
Thank you, Prabhu. Haribo.
In these 3 verses, King Puranjana's going to the forest to kill animals is symbolic of living entities being driven by the mode of ignorance and thus engaging in different activities for sense gratification. The material body itself indicates that the living entity is already influenced by the 3 modes of material nature and that he is driven to enjoy material resources. When the body is influenced by the mode of ignorance, its infection becomes very acute. When it is influenced by the mode of passion, the infection is at the symptomatic stage. However, when the body is influenced by the mode of goodness, the materialistic infection becomes purified. The ritualistic ceremonies recommended in religious systems are certainly on the platform of goodness. But because within the material world, even the mode of goodness is sometimes polluted by other qualities, namely passion and ignorance. A man in goodness is sometimes driven by the influence of ignorance.
Thank you, Krishan Prabhu. Would you like to share any reflection, anything which really struck with you in this purport of Srila Prabhupada, trying to tell us the various degrees of how somebody could be influenced or deceased because of an infection?
I think the important thing is that what I've realized from my own personal experiences is that when you're in the mode of ignorance, sometimes what would happen is that you can trap your own self, because I think in general a lot of people are in this mode and you sort of think that it's, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you feel that it's not like, it's almost like a normality that, oh, that person's in it, so the effects of their behavior then wears off on you. So it's like you have to intentionally make more of an effort to try and rise up as much as you can.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, that's a very important point you made. You see, nobody can actually, as a living entity, being the part and parcel of the Lord, who's all powerful, all attractive, all opulent, full of renunciation, full of strength, full of riches, full of knowledge, having these 7 opulences in full, and we as being the ansh of the Lord, mame vamso jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana, that we are the part and parcel of the Lord. So a living entity, although conditioned, can never claim or proclaim that I am completely fallen, I can never rise. The whole idea of us being, at least in the human form, is we are meant to rise. Even if we are, you made a point about, even if we don't feel like, or we are not in state, we still have to endeavor. There needs to be an element. So basically what I'm trying to say is what my Guru Maharaj often says: nobody can claim to be permanently disqualified. That is just not on. It is not at all acceptable. We are part and parcel of the Lord, and there is every opportunity, as long as there is some favorable circumstances. For everyone, it requires some element. For somebody, it could be a book of Srila Prabhupada. For somebody, it could be prasadam of, it could be a friendship of a devotee. It could be a selfless service to another Vaishnava. It could be just inviting a friend to the home for prasadam, well, of course, when we can, and just speaking to him and serving him. And that way, everything which is there, some ill effects in our heart, that completely goes away. So thank you for sharing. I'm not going to go into the detail of King Puranjana's story, because I believe Madhukumari Mataji went in quite depth about King Puranjana and how he was trying to enjoy. It's an allegory story which was narrated by Narad Muni, and how he was trying to really enjoy the material sense gratification. And here Prabhupada makes such a beautiful line. He says that the material body itself indicates that the living entity is already influenced by the three modes of material nature, and that he is driven to enjoy material resources. When the body is influenced by the mode of ignorance, its infection becomes very acute. You see, of course, right now, the new variant of coronavirus, it's extremely acute because it's spreading like wildfire. There were 50,000 cases yesterday. It's going to probably rise tomorrow. And it's spreading like wildfire right now. And of course, we see it's huge, big numbers. But as going back to our great Chandra Chaitanya Prabhu's point, that most people are under this acute situation and infection of not necessarily COVID, but if you think about it, of this ignorance, because they have no idea what is to be done, what is not to be done, who to be followed, who not to be followed, in what form the charity has to be done, and how it shouldn't be done. Most people have no conception of charity. What kind of austerity, tapa, they have no idea what tapa is. So this infection, from the degree or from a point of view of Bhagavad-gita, is much higher and much severe than COVID-19. Of course, COVID-19 is on the surface, it's hitting us, and it is a sad part of the life. It is very unfortunate. People are losing their dear loved ones, and it's not a nice feeling. But a devotee, if you look at it from Prabhupada's perspective, a pure devotee perspective, he's looking at all these people and he's crying. I'll share a little story. I want to do goal setting. What's the time now? I always run. Oh my God, it's 8:25. Right. Let me try to do what I can. So here we see in this part, there's a story. Srila Prabhupada, once he was in London, he was in a London black cab traveling with his disciples to go to a news conference. And there he had a wonderful news conference. While he was going in the black cab, he was traveling on Oxford Street, and he was seeing people in rush hour rushing through with the bags. And Prabhupada started to have tears. He started to cry quite profusely, actually. And then everybody started to get worried that what happened to Prabhupada. Prabhupada went to the program somehow or other. Obviously, Srila Prabhupada, pure devotee, he gave a wonderful talk at the news conference. He came back and devotees were still worried. They thought they made some offenses, or prasadam wasn't right, or Prabhupada wasn't happy with something, but Prabhupada was just not giving answers. So Prabhupada came back, he settled down in his room, and a disciple, I believe Tamal Krishna Maharaj, somebody asked that, Prabhupada, what happened, And Prabhupada said, you didn't see? There were quite a few disciples by then in his room, and everybody's like, Prabhupada, no, we didn't see what you saw. Please tell us, Prabhupada. He said, you didn't see these people running from morning to evening with their bags and running around, and in the night going back home and getting engaged in sense gratification. And again, same thing in the living a life of dogs. And Prabhupada said, I'm feeling for them, that they're away from their real father who's waiting for them in spiritual world. You see, that's compassion. A pure devotee of the Lord really looks at, he has this Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavi Hashtini Sunicheva Sapakecha Pandita Samadarshina. He sees that there is a super soul in everyone's heart, and that's why this soul is very dear to the Lord, who's situated in the heart, accompanying him. And Prabhupada was in tears, that is called compassion for souls who are suffering. And Chandra Chaitanya Prabhu made such a great point. That is why it is so important for us to distribute these books of Srila Prabhupada in mass quantities. We don't know which book will come in whose hands. There are so many life-changing stories as far as the books are concerned. So let's move on to the last part, last verse, and that is, we can have Geeta Mataji, would you like to unmute yourself and read this purport for us from Bhagavatam?
Sure, yes.
Thank you.
A person in the mode of ignorance commits many sinful activities. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Srila Rupa Goswami explains that a man becomes sinful out of ignorance only. The resultant effect of sinful life is suffering. Those who are not in knowledge, who commit violations of the standard laws, are subject to be punished under criminal laws. Similarly, the laws of nature are very stringent. If a child touches fire without knowing the effect, he must be burned, even though he is only a child. If a child violates the law of nature, there is no compassion. Only through ignorance does a person violate the laws of nature, and when he comes to knowledge, he does not commit any more sinful acts.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. So you see, a person in the mode of ignorance he tends to commit a lot of sinful activities. And those who are not in knowledge, who commit violations of the standard laws, are subjected to be punished under criminal laws. Prabhupada used to say on few occasions that in the earlier times in India, if a man kills another man, he's hanged to death. And Prabhupada said that in one way that punishment is quite well deserved, because at least by doing that, that person is able to atone to his sin. He may get some reaction in the next life, but by not putting him through death or not giving him that punishment, or him running away or killing more people and never getting caught by police or the government law, does not mean he can escape the material law, which is made by the Lord and by the material energy. He would be killed. That's why those who eat meat, unfortunately, it is directly mentioned in Bhagavatam, they would take on a body which would then be eaten or butchered on many times, actually. So these laws of karma are very, very strong. And that's why if a child violates the law of nature, there is no compassion. Only through ignorance does a person violate the laws. Prabhupada gives another example. When you're playing, or son is playing, trying to put his finger in the fan and the fan is still running, whether the fan does not know it's a 4-year child, if the child puts his finger in and if he's able to reach, it'll cut his finger. That's how the laws are, unfortunately. Even though we may not be knowingly committing it, but because we are committing it, we are bound to get the reaction. So that was some insights on the mode of ignorance and how it can be binding. So how does that sit with all of you? Was it any helpful, or any comments? Before
Prabhuji.
Yes, Jolly Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I'm a bit, I have a query on the man in ignorance, understanding is the ignorance in a man who understands the person as great soul to be more elevated than the common man. Well, the common man can have great souls, don't you think? Because they're in ignorance, meaning they don't have the knowledge. They don't know that they're doing wrong. So knowledge is the key thing here. And if they haven't got the knowledge, how can they make changes? That's my question, because the statement about men in ignorance understands a great soul. Is that right?
Yeah, no, the statement was, Mataji,
and to be a common man, they accept a common man as a great soul, the opposite. Well, a common man can be a great soul, don't you think?
Yeah, so I think the point there is it depends on how you look at the common man. But what is being referred there by Prabhupada is, say, even a common man as in a human, even let's say Sachin Tendulkar, he's a human. I mean, he may have he's famous. That's a wonderful, great qualities he has, and he's played the cricket. We really admire him. I personally admire Sachin Tendulkar. But that doesn't necessarily mean we take him to be the supreme personality and start worshipping him. That's called ignorance, Mataji. It is from that perspective. You may find somebody, let's say in India, there are many people who come up and say, oh, this is the Baba who turns the metal into gold and he gives the gold back to you. Now, that person may be common and he may have attained some material siddhi. There are many siddhis or yogic powers one can attain. But just by doing that act, if one starts to believe this person is Bhagwan or the Lord, then that person is in a mode of ignorance, because he's driven by his own instinct and with the results which he's saying immediately manifesting in front of him without really going through the understanding of the scriptures. Do you see my point, Jolly Mataji?
Yeah, but they're in a state of the unknown. They don't know any better.
Yeah, so that's why it's ignorance.
So how do we reach out to them then? Because I mean, okay, we are distributing books and trying to get them engaged, but I feel that you can be a common man, but you can be able to develop a great soul, a compassion for other people, practicing goodness without having knowledge, that kind of knowledge that we're talking about.
Yes,
Or
and
going through the intellectual level of acknowledging, acquiring education, that kind of thing. That's what I'm trying to say.
yes, Jolly Mataji, and a lot of people are pious, and they can be common, they can be very down to earth, and some people are manifested with some wonderful qualities.
That's
But
right.
the point I'm trying to make here, even those wonderful qualities, if that qualities ultimately do not come to the point to understand that I'm part and parcel of the Lord, and there is a supreme personality of Godhead, and the real purpose of my life is to engage in the devotional service to the Lord, if that common man with these wonderful quality does not do anything, then it is shrama eva hi kevalam, that all of that wonderful qualities he had throughout his life, through which he guided some people, he gave some money to the blind charity, he opened some schools, he opened some hospitals, all of that wonderful works he did, he would still have to take another birth either in this earthly planet to exhaust his pious activity, or even go to the heavenly planets to enjoy the heavenly delights or their opulence, because of which he got because of being such a wonderful and pious soul. So even that piety from that common point of view, Jolly Mataji, it is not that conducive for a human life, because we learn this in Bhagavad-gita, and you will hear more from the Lord as we go on into this chapter. In the 14th chapter, you'll see that how somebody who has the state of goodness, what kind of planet he will achieve after death, how somebody in mode of ignorance will achieve. So mode of goodness is still illuminating, although it's illuminating, but it is still binding, because we are performing to do good activities. We have to then take the results of this good activity. Only when we take to devotional service, Jolly Mataji, then there is some hope to transcend these three modes completely and not being able to take birth, death, old age, and disease.
Yeah, but what about the poor down and out who has got no opportunity whatsoever to climb out of their mess? How can you? How can we say
So yeah,
it's all his doing? You see what I mean? That's what I'm trying to say.
yeah. So a devotee's nature is, Mataji, that when he sees somebody who is inferior to him, in the sense that that person has no money, or he cannot look after himself, and or he naturally feels compassion to such a person, not just literally in the sense of Krishna, even an evolved devotee in his life. Like we heard that beautiful example from Sutapa Prabhu that day in the train. Sutapa Prabhu met this wonderful young guy, 13 years old, had no money, he was illegal in the country, he had no bed to go anywhere, and he took the Bhagavad-gita. As Sutapa Prabhu was reaching out to give him 30-40 euros, what he had in his pocket, just in that moment he gave the change, whatever change he had, for Bhagavad-gita. So my point is that as a devotee, it doesn't necessarily mean if somebody doesn't have a food, we try to shove book at him. No, in that moment, that person may just need some prasadam. So first, give him some prasadam. Look after. That's why you see a lot of times we make these mistakes. Of course, giving knowledge is the ultimate thing, but we have to really make friends with the people. We have to come down to their level. And then we are all trying to practice that stage, so we have to have compassion in a very holistic way towards the person. If you meet somebody who's starving for the food, you want to give him some prasadam first, and then ask him, how is he doing? What is he doing? Has he got a place to live? How can I help in whatever capacity I can? And then look to also give him some Krishna conscious literature. Because if you give him that Krishna conscious literature or some help from spiritual life, that will stay for him for eternity, Mataji.
Well, Prabhupada made major changes by going to these communities. Why aren't we doing it? I mean, like going to the what was it? Not gypsies, the down and outs, the abuse, the ones that did substance abuse, and the gypsies, not the gypsies, what you call them? Hippies.
Yeah.
So he reached out to that in those areas. I mean, because I think these people don't know any better sometimes, and they need that extra input. How are we as a community who is so passionate about, getting the message across, not reaching in that area? Sorry, I'm just asking, because there is a time now that we're looking at ways of developing and getting people to know about our movement.
So I'm just conscious of time. I'll try to maybe answer your question briefly, Jolly Mataji, is that I think two things here. One, we are definitely trying because everybody who's a follower of Srila Prabhupada in some degree or other, there is a lot of activities taking place, both even in the places where people are not so much evolved, or even who do not have clean habits. There are devotees living in West who are reaching out to such communities even today. In India, where there is a huge rural community, many sannyasis, Srila Prabhupada disciples, especially, I'm trying to remember it, what's the name of Maharaj who, I can't remember him, but there are many Maharaj who are preaching in the rural areas where people do not have anything, and they're providing them clothes, they're providing them prasadam, they're providing them education to their children. So a lot of spiritual activities are happening. Sorry, Bhakti Purushottam Maharaj, that's right. Yeah, that's one, and there's another one, I'm forgetting the name of Maharaj. Quite a few things are happening. And the other aspect is, Mataji, you see, one thing to look at Prabhupada's life, you see, Prabhupada was a Paramhamsa, he was a pure devotee. So only somebody who is situated in a very strong Krishna consciousness can go in such a place and not be affected and yet preach and come out successful. And there are many such empowered disciples of Srila Prabhupada who are doing it, Mataji. But when we look at ourselves or around us, what we can do is what's in our control or in our immediate proximity at this moment. So that is why you see there is a thing about, like people give an example, why don't, like somebody asked, it was a while ago, why don't the devotees go into the bar and give out books? And I think there was a similar question asked to Prabhupada as well. The point is, if you think you are strong enough to go inside the bar and give somebody a book and not get affected by the environment there, all glories to you. But devotees, Prabhupada has always warned us to be very careful of the material energy, Mataji. We are still, our Shraddha is still Komal. We are still trying to practice Krishna consciousness. We are still trying to practice bhakti. So all I would say is we have to look in our immediate proximity and see what is it that I can start to influence. Can I start with the person on my left, my family, to my right, my children, to my neighbors, to the people in Queensbury, the people in London, people in like that. We have to expand this movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you, Mataji. Sorry, Prabhus and Matajis, there isn't much time left for goal setting, but I think this is a session I really like to share a few insights. It would be good to hear if how many of you actually sat down with a piece of paper and pen yesterday and wrote down some of your goals and how this year was and what is it that you're planning to achieve next year. So please share if anybody has done that. I did manage to take out some time just before I went to bed last night. It was a hectic day, but I wrote down some things which I thought I would like to accomplish in 2021. There was a degree of spiritual and personal element to it. So here is my suggestion to all of you. Why don't you take your 10 minutes tonight or tomorrow during the day and just write down some goals and try to make the goals smart. Smart means S stands for you. Somebody may have to help me because I often forget this. S stands for specific. M stands for measurable. A stands for achievable. And R stands for realistic. Yeah. I think realistic or A, one of them have changed over a period of time. It has evolved, this SMART mantra as well. And T stands for time bound. So when you're writing your goal, try to write it in like I have my sadhana, then I have my obviously my services, which are also part of my sadhana, and also a little bit about your personal life. So put down some nice goals for yourself. My Guru Maharaj often says that always never greet dawn without a map. We as a human beings should always have some kind of goals which makes us keep going in our life. And one of the things with the goals is we may think, okay, I'll do this, I'll do that. That's all wonderful. But there is a saying, Stephen Covey says that what gets written gets done. And then what gets done can also be measured accordingly. So the power of pen is very, very powerful. So do write down few thoughts. And once you've written them down, we don't need to discuss them, obviously, but you can put them out in front of you, make it very visible. Like where I'm sitting, I've got my stuff in front of me on the table here. And I reflect and I see, how am I doing? I've got, okay, these many verses I wanted to do. Am I reading these many pages of Bhagavatam every day? And am I trying to memorize a verse, at least one line of a verse a day? And am I, have I done my chant for the day, chapter a day? Am I chanting my rounds? Have I read something to appreciate the holy name in a day? These are some nice little goals. You can read a prayer before you go to bed. And these are all not my ideas. I felt inspired from my spiritual master, who always gives a session at the end of the year. Many of you probably heard of it. And I think there is a class of his also where he really goes into the detail of it. So these are very helpful things, because if you think of, some of you must be working in the corporate world, we are so much driven by goals, right? So why not have goals? Our Goswamis had their goals. They were even counting how many dandavats they were giving every day, how much they were bowing down, how many times. Raghunath Das Goswami was counting. I paid that many dandavats. Haridas Thakur was able to, that's why we know he was chanting 3 lakh names. Why were they counting? Because this Sankhya Purvakam is an important limb of our regulated life, which we were discussing in this verse today. So those were some of my thoughts on the goal setting. If you feel helpful, then please reflect, write something down, and perhaps tomorrow we can have a little bit more conversation around goal setting, and maybe have a 10-minute exercise, because tomorrow verse is also short. So we can set aside 10 minutes tomorrow and try to refine that, what we will all write today. I will also go back and work on my goals, which I've written, because I need to detail them down today a little bit more. So we can all have that session tomorrow. How does that sound to everybody?
Good. Any ideas of the number? How much we have to goal set?
So, yeah, Puja Mataji, very nice question. It's about how much you think you can digest. You see, a very good friend of mine and a senior devotee, Karthik Chand Prabhu, told me recently, when I was asking him a question, he said, you have to see how much is on your plate, and then how much on the plate will you be able to eat, or else get a clean plate and put it aside for time being if you can't eat everything on the plate, and then reflect how much will you be able to digest really after eating. So my point is, look at your day and see how much time you have, but make sure that you keep some time for these important aspects: chanting the holy name, reading or studying Srila Prabhupada books, hearing from Srila Prabhupada. Even if you could put 5 minutes or 10 minutes and hear these wonderful Vanipedia lectures of Srila Prabhupada, they're like 7-8 minutes long every day. That would that'll get you through the day very nicely. So hearing, chanting, and reading is an important element, and some practical devotional service, like practical service, book distribution, prasadam distribution, and daily worship, whatever you can practically do in your capacity, try to do that. Yeah, so those are some of the things. And there is an app which you can download, Puja Mataji, called Be a Sage Page by Page. And in that app, you can set yourself a target or a goal of reading certain amount of pages. I've just noticed Vrindavan Chand Prabhu is online. Perhaps Vrindavan Chand Prabhu is aware of these sessions. He's heard of these goal-setting sessions of my spiritual master. Maybe, Prabhu, you could share some endorsement or some testimony, because I know you are very, very experienced in your Krishna consciousness, and you are so wonderfully regulated and performing your spiritual life with such diligence and sincerity that I'm personally inspired by your example, Vrindavan Chand Prabhu. So would you like to share some couple of insights in the last couple of minutes to conclude today's session, Vrindavan Chand Prabhu?
You always catch me out, Divya Prabhu. I think what I will do is I'll find the class your Gurmas gave on the New Year's Day. That was a very insightful class. It's nice to hear from the advanced devotees, and everyone can can take some lessons from that. That was a very, very nice class you referred to.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, Prabhus and Matajis, it was wonderful to be in your association this evening once again. I look forward to hearing and chanting tomorrow with all of you. And also just wanted to remind you that on Sunday morning is the National Sankirtan Festival. We are celebrating our marathon effort, which we had this year, a wonderful historical marathon. All the results, everything will be revealed in this particular session. And we will also be having our Bhakti Vedanta Manor a specific congregation festival on online on following Saturday. Not this Saturday. This Saturday is the national one, where you will hear all the temples giving a 5-minute update of how they're doing. And we will have an update from Bhaktivedanta Manor where we will share the scores. But in the next one, we will have opportunity to hear from more devotees and their experiences. So it would be nice if you can attend both these sessions. That's my request to you. The one tomorrow on Sunday morning is at 11 o'clock. And the details have already been shared on the Sankirtan Forever group with all of you. So please try to attend that session. If not anything else, we will be left with some inspiration and actually a joy, and we will feel ourselves very privileged and fortunate after hearing that session that we got an opportunity to take part in these wonderful pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So on that note, thank you everybody. Rita Mataji saying smart goals sounds really good. Hare Krishna, happy, healthy New Year. Yes, wishing all of you a very happy Krishna conscious year and all the best. And we will see you all tomorrow evening. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu vevacha patita nam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo
Namo Namaha.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for the
Hare
wonderful class.
Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna,
you.
Prabhuji, Hare
devotee.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna to everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you
Hare
so much.
Krishna.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank you.
Krishna to everyone.
Hari Bol.
Hare
Haribol.
Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Thank
Hare
you
Krishna.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jyoti Mataji, for your wonderful service, for capturing the pictures from the marathon and on recording these sessions every day. You're doing a wonderful service, Mataji. I pray to Srila Prabhupada that Srila Prabhupada empowers you unlimitedly.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you.